Hello everyone. Today we are going to continue talking about while loop and see some more complex questions. Okay, so this question that I'm going to begin with, this question is going to ask user to enter some values. It requests some values, and at the end of while loop we calculate the total of the entered values. Okay, so we are going to begin with summation, a variable that is 0. Then we are going to ask user to input value. How we do that? Using input function, right? Enter value. And what else? So the value that we are going to get must be integer, right? We can actually, let's start the while loop and then I will explain. We must convert this to integer, right? So let's start our while loop. We say while the value is not empty, for example. We could say Q also. We could say nothing also. So a space means while value is not a space. So while the value is not a space means as long as the person or user is entering values, get the value and convert this to a floating number. So now what I want to do, this is going to be the value that is converted. So this is going to be value that is floating number, for example, right? So let's write down convert the value to floating number. And then what we do, we are going to now say now summation was 0, right, at the beginning. Now add the summation to this value that is being converted, and now our summation is being updated. The sum is being updated, right? And then now again we are going to say now value. Again we are requesting the input from user, right? Again requesting input from user, correct? And then now because I'm interested in the summation, when the while loop is finished, the while loop will finish whenever user does not enter a value anymore and user enter what is that, a space, right? So we will write down summation is equal to the summation, str summation, right? And then here we can also enter a kind of instruction, enter a value or by entering space, right? So first we ask for a value, and then we are going to instruct them and say exit by entering a space, right? So let's see what happens now. So now if I enter a space, it's going to print the summation as 0, right? It's going to exit out. If I enter like 2, it's going to request another value, then 3, then 2, then 0, and 6, right? And then when do we see the summation? As soon as I enter a space and exit out, then we will see the summation to be 13. Okay, so this was for the summation. So what we do, we initially say the summation is equal 0. Now we are going to define a value that user is going to input. As long as the value is being a valid number, we are going to continue and get the value, convert it, add it to summation, and then request another value. If user enter a space, then the program will exit out and the while loop will not go through anymore. Okay, so another example says let's get the negative numbers. No, let's get the numbers from the user and count the negative numbers. So how do we do that? So we need a while loop, right? While what? While the value is something like this, means while the value is not a space, means the person is not exiting out, we are going to get a value and then convert it to the what is that, integer. So we are going to get the value converted integer, right? So where this value coming from? It's coming from the input that the user is going to give us, right? So these are the value the user will give us. I'm saying this conversion will store in a new variable, which is value integer. And then what else I'm supposed to do? I'm going to say as long as the value is positive, just get more and more values. If value is negative, count the negative value, right? So how do we do that? Did you see I said if the value is negative, so we are going to say using if condition. If the value that user is entering is less than 0, so what's going to happen? We are going to set up a counter, negative counter. So negative counter is going to be negative counter plus 1, right? But did I define negative counter before? Like the summation here that I used to add all the values to each other. So I have to have a counter set up already, right? To like 0. So it starts from 0. At the beginning it's 0, and then it's going to add 1 if the value is negative. So instead of that long kind of line, I'm going to do this because you already saw such a thing. So indenting, if goes under the while loop, right? And then this part, which is part of if statement, it's going to indent it and be under if statement. And then what I need, else, right? What happens else? Else, it's going to go back to the loop, request the what is that input. But I cannot use else, because what else means? Else means if this is positive, the value is positive, then get the number. But we want to get a number no matter what, no matter value is positive or negative. We want to get number over and over and over, and then just count the negative one, right? So this else doesn't make sense, because I want to get the number no matter what, no matter negative or positive. So indenting goes back under while, like it's going to be under all the all the statement for while loop. So we are going to now again say we want to get more value, right? So now value is what the user is inputting, correct? And then, you know, as soon as user is entering a space, it's going to exit out this program. So but we want to print something as soon as user exit out, right? We want to know the total number of negative number. Since I'm repeating number 2 times, total count of negative number is what? str, the negative counter, right here. Okay, so let's see what happens. Let's read everything again to see everything is fine. Okay, so we set up a negative counter to 0, right? And then we are requesting value. Enter a value, positive, negative, 0, whatever it is. As long as the value is not a space, it's going to convert the value to integer, right? Because the value input gets is a string. It must be converted to either integer or float, right? And then what we are going to do, we get the value here, converted value here, right? We say if the value is negative, now we want to increment the counter, because we are, all the aim of this while loop is to count to see how many negative number is being entered, right? And then after the if condition is done, we are going to request more values, right? And then at the end, whenever the user is done and he doesn't want to or she doesn't want to enter any value, they will enter space, and then program is going to just show the number of count of negative number. So let's see what happens here. I'm going to enter 29, I'm going to enter 71, 13, negative 2. Now what happens? Negative 2 cause the if condition works here, and now our negative counter is not 0 anymore. Our negative counter is going to be 1, right? And then I'm going to enter another negative number, and then it's going to go through this if condition, and negative counter is going to increment again. So it was 1, now it becomes 2, right? And then I'm going to enter space, and look what happened. It's going to give us the output of 2 for the count of negative numbers. Okay, so this was about counting negative numbers. Let's have a actually what is that, a participation point for you before we go through all the examples. Okay, so here the participation point. What values are printed by this while loop? So we are going to have the number equal 1, and then while number is less than equal 5, value equal number multiply 3, print str of value plus, and then we are going to have a comma here, and then going to have number incremented to number plus 1 equal. And then the answers. Well, you should find all the answers and exact one, like everything. Whatever you get, you write down in a row. So your answer must be in a row. All you get as answer must be submitted completely. Okay, so this is your participation point, right? Okay, so let's go back to the while loop again. Okay, so now we are going to show and work on a Boolean expression. So we are going to say valid is equal to false. Then we have a while loop says not valid. So now at this point, let's stop. So what is not valid? Not valid is not false, right? Because valid is false. False goes here, so we have not false. What is not false? Not false is true, correct? So while this condition is true, let's go through the loop, right? So remember, if while loop starts with a false condition, it's not going to go through. This statement here, this expression must be true in order for while loop to continue the loop. Okay, so now I'm going to get value. Value is integer input, and I'm going to ask, please enter a positive value less than 100. Okay, then now I'm going to test the value. If value is greater than 0 and value is less than 100, then valid becomes true, else print invalid input. Okay, so we want a positive number, right? So when we say positive number, means the user should just enter a positive number. So if user enter a negative number, the loop is going to break, right? It's going to stop. So what we are going to do to make sure the value is positive and also less than 100, we are going to create a condition here. If the value is positive and it's less than 100, valid is true, right? Else the input is invalid. So if the input is invalid, it's going to go back and do the do the loop again until the user enter a positive number less than 100. So here we only want a positive number less than 100. Otherwise, the loop is going to ask user to enter another value, right? So as long as the value is correct, loop will stop because it gets the value it wants. If value is not correct, then loop is going to ask for another value. So let's see what happens here. Oops, what did I do? Valid. So it said valid is not defined. I thought I defined it here. Valid. Oh, here. So V must be a capital V, right? Okay, good. We are fine. So here it's going to ask for a number. I'm going to enter -10. It's going to ask me enter again because that was a negative number. Let's again -2. Again, it's going to ask us until I enter a positive number. Okay, done. So let's print here. Print the number you entered is what? Plus str value. So now what happens? Oops, again. What did I do? Oh, okay, I thought I had a mistake. So -10 doesn't work. -3 doesn't work. 24, it works and it says the number you entered is 24. Okay, so next one we want to create a loop that returns, actually asks for the values and returns the largest after entering values are finished. So we are going to enter values over and over and over and over, and during the time that we are entering values, while loop is calculating the largest value, and then whenever we stop and we don't enter anything, like we enter space, then loop will stop and it will print out the largest value. So like actually no, I wanted to say like summation and counter, we should initialize it. I just realized no, we don't need to actually initialize it. So let's say largest value is the input that user is entering, right? Enter a value. Then we are going to have an input, a string, and that's going to be the input value. And we are going to start the while loop, and then we are going to say the input string, if this input string is not equal to a space. Do they have this for while? Okay. While this is not a space, what we are going to do, we are going to say a value is this one, actually sorry, integer of this one, right? The string the user is entering. And now we need the if condition. If this value is greater than largest, then, so the reason we have two of this input value, this is the first initial value user enters, so this is the second one. Why? Because so I should have one or two, at least two values to say which one is bigger, right? If I don't know which one is, if I don't have two values, how can I say which one is largest? That's why we have two values. We ask for two values, right? This is the initial value. We directly convert that to integer, and this is the beginning of the value that is going to be compared with the previous one. So now this value is going to be compared with the largest, right? And then if this value is bigger than the largest, so now what happens? Now the largest is going to become the value that user entered, right? We are going to update our largest value that was like the first value user entered. So we are going to update largest value. Okay, so now again, now we let's say we have two values so far, right? And then this was the beginning, this was the second one, and then we convert the second one to integer, convert the second value to the first value, and then now the largest value becomes the second value if the second value was the biggest, right? And then now at this point I have to request another input string, and this input string goes under while loop, right? Because we don't want the if condition do anything more. We are done with the if condition. Now let's say program finishes. What we want to do, we want to print the largest value. Like this. Let's run this. So let's say my first value that I'm entering is 2, and this is going to be saved as largest, right? And then now the second value is 4, and this is the input string, right? The input string is going to go here, right? Convert to the integer, and then now the input string becomes value. Now this value is going to be compared with 2, right? If value, which is 4, is greater than 2, then the largest value now is 4, right? And we have the largest value at this point, which is 4. And then what happens? Again, it's asking for another value. So now if the value is 3, right? So what happens? It's going to go through the while loop and says, okay, still we are continuing. We got the input string. We are continuing because there is no space yet, and then converting the value to integer and compare the value with the largest. At this point, largest was 4, right? So if 3 is not bigger than 4, we are going to jump to this point and say, okay, we need another value. So here, another value, 5, right? And then 5 is going to go there, and see that 5 is not a space, so we are good. We are going to continue to our loop. 5 is becoming the value, integer value. 5 is going to be compared with the largest. What is the largest at this point? 4, still 4. 5 is greater than 4, and then we are going to replace the largest amount. The largest amount is not 4 anymore. Now it's becoming 5 because 5 is going to be stored here, right? And then we need another value. So now let's say I don't want to enter another value. I'm going to enter space. What happened? A space goes here, and then the while loop will stop because while loop doesn't expect a space. If a space enters, while loop is going to break and it's going to jump to this point. So this point is going to print out the largest string for us. Okay, so this is the example. So for all of this example, I could say no space or empty, right? Let's see what happens. I will enter 4, I will enter 6, 2, 9, and then as soon as I just enter nothing, it's going to give me the result. So if value is empty, means no space, no gap, just enter. Then it's going to stop, right? For all of this, we can have a condition for breaking the while loop as just enter, right? Not a space. Or I could do this. Look at this. I could have Q for quit, Q. And then look at this, 4, 3, 6, and then Q, it's going to quit, right? And then if I have a small q, let's see if this one works with a small q. 3, 4, 5, and q. No, it's not going to work, right? So just capital Q. And this one can be Q. So anything, any condition that can, break the loop can go here, right? Okay, so let's see what else we have. Okay, so I think, the next one is the smallest. Let's calculate the smallest value also. Okay, so now asks for the values and returns the smallest. How it does that? So like the whole thing we had here, let's print this here. I'm going to say a smallest. Okay, the smallest value, and then I'm going to replace it with all the largest that I had. And what else should I change? I should change the condition, right? So now if the value that we are entering is less than a smallest, then what happens? The smallest is going to be printed out. So let's hear while value is empty. Oh, because this one is still running, we have problem. Okay, so now 3, 4, 5, 7, 1, and then 5, 0, 5, and then what is that? The condition says enter. So 0 is the smallest between all of them. Okay, so this is for the while loop for this lecture. Next time I will come back with more example about the while loop, and ask me your question please. We'll see you later.